The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. At that time, again Jesus spoke to the chief priests and elders of the people in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a marriage feast for his son, and sent his servants to call those who were invited to the marriage feast, but they would not come. Again he sent other servants, saying, 'Tell those who have been invited, behold, I have made ready my dinner. My oxen and my fat calves are killed, and everything is ready. Come to the marriage feast.' But they made light of it, and went off, one to his farm, another to his business, while the rest seized his servants, treated them shamefully, and killed them. The king was angry, and he sent his troops and destroyed those murderers and burned their city. Then he says to his servants, 'The wedding is ready, but those invited were not worthy. Go therefore to the streets and invite to the marriage feast as many as you find.' And those servants went out into the streets and gathered all whom they found, both bad and good. So the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to look at the guests, he saw there was a man who had no wedding garment. And he said to him, 'Friend, how did you get in here without a wedding garment?' And he was speechless. And the king said to the attendants, 'Bind him hand and foot and cast him out into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen.'" The Gospel of the Lord. Many are called, few are chosen. A lot of misinterpretations have been given to this. So let us begin from right here. We all gathered this morning. This church is open to everyone, isn't it? When I go to the market, there is no one that says you cannot enter the market. There is no sieve. There is no sentry at the door of any supermarket saying you can't go in to do business. I've not seen any. In fact, I have seen the invalids themselves, all those who are not totally stable mentally, go into the market and they are not driven. See everyone going there. So there is no sentry blocking. The church is like that. Well, there is one interesting thing when we get to the market. There are two things we are capable of doing in the market. Number one, we actually conduct business. We buy or we sell. Number two, we do what we call window shopping. In fact, people go into the market without having a penny, but they have ideas of the things that can be found in the market. And as we speak, there are people you ask, where can we get snail? They will tell you, but they never bought snail. It's as a result of the second aspect of marketing. But in all of it, whoever goes into the market does not go there empty-handed. There are influences, things influence them. The things you see influence you. Sometimes you may not have money to buy something, but you mark it down. I didn't know I could find this here. So that whether you buy or you sell, or you don't even buy or you don't even sell, there is an active influence when we go into the marketplace. This condition is like this because you're dealing with nature. But when it comes to supernature, when it comes to spiritual things, I have found considerable number of examples to show that attraction that happens in market does not happen when the children of God gather for spiritual purposes. And the church is open to everyone. I noted with dismay, yes, during the period in which we called for the prayer of God's glory upon our heads in that silent moment. Yes, some immediately seized the opportunity. Every single opportunity in the church is to commune. And there were lots of people who weren't carried along. Really? Were they not carried along? Many are called, few are chosen. I'm trying to explain the meaning of that. But was it the case? We were not carried along because there was an announcement of a prayer that should be made by every head that is inside here. There was no segregation. There was no picking of some people who are going to make that declaration. And we're going to make that declaration upon ourselves. And some few were totally out of space. I noted the declaration content of the response to the responsorial cell. In the Lord's own house shall I dwell forever and ever, for length of days unending. It is either we don't believe in it or we don't care about it. But every one of these rounds up to the question, why did I come here? When the halls of celebration was opened to those both good and bad by the summon of the king, there was still someone who got him there. See, the problem was not the person's being bad. Of course, it doesn't have any problem that the person is good. Now the banquet was open to everyone. Now you are going for a banquet and you don't fit into the condition of a banquet. So what are you doing there? They say many are called, few are chosen. A lot of people have used that to describe a kind of segregational spirit that God segregates. God chooses some people and He doesn't choose some people. Who is making the choice here actually? Now we are all here and someone is refusing to pray. Who is making the choice? And God sits from high. He's looking at His children. You don't call me. Should I now do over something to start coming? So who is making the choice? You see, many are called, few are choosing, Jesus Christ said. And a lot of people had accused Jesus Christ for making that statement. Because it was grossly misunderstood. It's a very simple meaning. You see, when the intention of the one that calls you is very much clear. He says, come and eat. As Isaiah prophesied in the first reading of today. So on this mountain the Lord of hosts will make for all peoples, not some. There is no segregation. It's always general. A feast of fat things. Fat things here explains fullness, glory, completeness. A feast of choice wines, of fat things full of marrow, of choice wines well refined. There is nothing that is deficient actually when God gives a call. But then, how many people will be ready? It's like they say they are sharing rice at Ring Road. And then we go there with an empty hand. We didn't go with a bowl. We didn't go with a bag. You're sharing rice. Good. But when you come, you see your mates presenting their bowls and they're feeling it. You see some presenting their bags and they're feeling it. And then you didn't go with anything. If you had come with something, yours would have been filled. The point is, who is making the choice? Invitations were given to special people to come for the banquet. They rejected it. And this particular parable Jesus Christ made was directed at the Jews. Because with the very mouth by which they boasted, they also perpetrated and declared the greatest of faithlessness. They did agree that there is no God that is as great as our God. They did agree that our God is God that is bigger than all nations, that we have been privileged to have this kind of God, that He does not deal those with other nations. He has not taught them His decrees. Now, they made a lot of declarations in the Old Testament and the Psalms about how God is selfishly theirs and theirs alone. But the sand they poured in God's eyes, it is those who are not God's children, supposedly, that are claiming the sands off. So who eventually is God's child? Now every one of us here have a responsibility, really, to make the declarations that have been made manifest in their lives. He has given the word. Until the word starts manifesting in our lives, we are empty, or at most we are filled with content of betrayal. I have always believed this. Anyone who is sitting on the pews of this church right now that does not carry out the bid of God is actually chancing someone who would have done that work. And so we would assume that that person is not sitting on any one of these pews, so that the pew will be filled by others. When I look at the church today, you go to the churches in towns and then we think that there are so many people. Now, as a young boy, I remember I had this very, very wrong notion of evangelization. I say the church does not need to speak to people. You see, the church is so mighty, the church is a rock, the church has lots of people, lots of faithful, and so if anyone does not know the truth to search for salvation, it's the person's luck. But as I grew, I discovered that a lot of spaces have been covered, so those who want to come do not have space to come, and the people who cover the spaces are not worthy to cover those spaces. Are you one of them? Are you sitting here and you don't have one single flair for the things of God? Why are you then here? But we have hope, and it is the reason for consistent spiritual energizing, the reason for consistent spiritual exaltation. You see, if I am living a life that is not in accordance with God's glory, there is definitely a reason for it, because God's glory brought me into this world. We need to know that. As long as we are sitting right here, we are the product of God's glory. If I am not acting in accordance with that creed of God's glory, there is a problem. We need to accept that in ourselves. Because I know that if I go to the market square, I become very active. My brain active, my eyes searching, my hands touching, and I'm walking. I am active. Now, why do I feel inactive when I am in the house of grace? Don't ever think it's ordinary. It's worse off when a child of 6 or 7 feels that way. A child of 8 or 9 do not have a connection. Don't think it's ordinary, because you see, the senses that we are made of receive the vibrations of things that are around us. How is it we receive the vibration of food, we receive the vibration of music, we hear children sing, we hear them dance, we receive the vibrations of everything that happens around us, and we don't receive the vibration of the Spirit? I've seen a 3-year-old child who's trying to pray like a father, a 3 or 4-year-old child or 6-year-old child speaking in tongues. You see, these children are allowed the vibration of the Spirit. And so there is no excuse if you have a child right here that does not manifest a certain move towards spirituality. It is a problem. The problem is consolidating. The problem is growing. It is a problem. It's important we nip it at the bud and get conscious about how our children are developing, and then let them feel these vibrations of the Spirit. If they can feel the vibrations of everywhere, I mean, they are dancing the latest dance. A child has feedbacks, and a child can also have positive spiritual feedbacks too. We need to help them channel towards that. You know, my earliest form of learning how to pray was ignited by the challenge of my own dad. You know, after he prayed himself, and then he calls us to pray. Now, I was lucky then that he wasn't that kind of a slow-handed man. You know, he would use his 2 fingers to form a cane. If you don't pray well, he'll teach you how to pray. You see, every one of us are meant to subsist in the glory of God. And so if we have some certain kind of behavior that makes us feel that wanting to be God-like would make us look lowered, I don't know what we define as lowered. But that's inferiority complex. Because the day a president of a nation starts worshiping, starts kneeling down, you see it everywhere on Instagram, you see it everywhere on Facebook, and people will start having the inspiration to want to kneel down. The president is kneeling down because a star is kneeling down. You know, you want to imitate the star. You know, the star eventually turns her earrings to a crucifix. Oh man, she loves Jesus. That's wonderful. You see, her earrings are religious, you know. And then you hear that she prays the rosary, you want to pray the rosary. Well, all those are good influences, but that's inferiority complex. Because the glory of God ranks high in you, and you're not meant to reduce it in your life. But when we are praying, we have positive influences becoming stars. It will influence people. But I'm telling you this day, that we are the ones eventually making the choices. It isn't God that is segregating and separating and determining those who would listen to Him. We continuously pray that we would have the grace to understand the hope to which we have been called. And just like St. Paul said in the second reading, we should be able to cling unto that God who can give us the strength to do all things. May God bless us all.